Today, we're converging in a courthouse. It's April 15th, and this might be the worst Trump crisis yet. The day he crosses one critical last line toward unraveling the American experiment. This is the Cliff's Edge live stream, usually hosted by Cliff Schechter. I'm Matt Robison. As many of you know, Cliff is in the midst of standing up another outstanding new show, a live stream on Substack on Thursdays. Substack's putting a lot behind that, but he wanted to make sure that this show kept going strong. So, as a longtime colleague of his, I'm a longtime contributor to his YouTube channel. He asked me to do a little bit more hosting here on Tuesdays, just for the time being. And we're going to have a really strong episode today with our frequent guest, Tony Michaels. Thanks to all of you who came over from his show, the Coffman Chronicle on Substack. We're also going to be joined a little bit later by Jason Fields. He's a veteran journalist, the deputy opinion editor at Newsweek. He's previously a deputy editor at The Week, also the previous opinion editor for Reuters, a veteran of the Associated Press, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. He's really been all over the stunning rapid demolition of the American system under Donald Trump. And we need to talk about that today. That's what we're going to get into. Before Tony Michaels jumps on, let me just quickly set up exactly what I mean. And it's so apt that we're live streaming on a channel called Cliff's Edge, because that's where we are. That's where Trump has taken us. In George Orwell's 1984, and side note, when I was a congressional staffer, I did a delegation trip to China, and I left that book on my bedside table just to tweak them. The authoritarian party, one of the members, says, "We believe in power for its own sake. We're not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power, not wealth or luxury or long life or happiness, only power, pure power. Obedience is not enough. Unless those you rule over are suffering, how can you be sure that they're obeying your will and not their own? Power is in inflicting pain and humiliation." Isn't that the story of the last month? The Substacker and conservative Andrew Sullivan, who's a naturalized citizen of the United States, recently canceled a trip to the UK for fear that he would not be readmitted to his own country, America, where he is a citizen. He wrote on Friday on Substack, they knew that Rumeysa Öztürk, that's the tough student, who the Washington Post found the State Department had no evidence of any anti-Semitism or ties to terrorism. They knew that she had done nothing wrong when they sent masked men to grab and detain her. This administration knew that Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a lawful protection order from U.S. courts preventing him from being deported. They sent him to a foreign jail anyway. And they knew that the Supreme Court told them that Abrego Garcia must be returned. They don't care. That brings us to today. At 4 p.m., the federal judge overseeing the Abrego Garcia case is holding a hearing to decide what to do about the brazen defiance of the courts that the Trump administration has undertaken. Now, all of you probably saw or read about the Kafkaesque press conference with the president of El Salvador the other day. He's a self-described dictator. True story. Calls himself a dictator. In which, with smirks and laughter, they laid out their cruel catch-22. They were like a bunch of sadistic frat boys torturing a pledge. El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, said he has no power to return Garcia. And the Trump team said, well, we have no power to do anything about it now that he's out of the country. Yale historian Timothy Snyder wrote this morning on Substack, summing this up, that the president has now defied a Supreme Court ruling to return a man who is mistakenly, by their own admissions, mistakenly sent to a gulag in another country. They celebrated the suffering of this innocent person and then spoke of sending Americans to foreign concentration camps. This is the beginning of an American policy of state terror, and it has to be identified as such to be stopped. So that's what I mean when I say we're at the cliff's edge, and why the title of today's show is The Worst Trump Crisis. We're asking about whether he's about to cross this last line to a disaster. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but make no mistake, at least in my mind, it would be an utter and unmitigated disaster to openly defy the Supreme Court or any of the federal courts. We can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. Once we cross that line, there's no going back. And in fact, things are likely to get a lot worse. If they can get away with this, they can get away with much more. They're clearly testing the limits of how far they can go. Over the weekend, President Trump announced unprecedented plans to target former government officials from his first term simply for criticizing him. The White House issued directives ordering the Justice Department to investigate Chris Krebs, who ran Trump's cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency, and former senior Department of Homeland Security official Miles Taylor. He said, "I think he's guilty of treason," Trump said. Don't forget, as Tony Michaels pointed out in his Substack column today, Trump was caught on a hot mic after that press conference with Bukele, after that ended, saying the quiet part out loud, saying the homegrowns are next. You've got to build about 5 more prisons. Well, what does he mean by that? Back in February, Bukele offered to Secretary of State Marco Rubio to take American citizens into his prison. You can look it up. Rolling Stone's Nikki McCann Ramirez reported that talks are underway inside the White House right now to try to make that happen. When asked whether he would be willing to deport American citizens convicted of violent crime to El Salvador, he said, "I'm all for it." Look, sure, this could be more Trump blather, trying to shock the libs, trying to get more attention to feed his gluttonous, never-ending hunger for attention. But that takes us back to that hearing at 4 o'clock, because the Trump team knows that if Mr. Abrego Garcia comes back to the U.S. and is available to the media and gets to describe the hell that he's surely living through, it'll bring a ton of negativity their way. And they just finished trying to take the attention off of this disaster by creating another giant disaster of a different kind with tariffs. They don't want him coming back. Kristi Noem actually said that he and the other 238 detained and deported individuals should, quote, spend the rest of their lives in that El Salvadorian prison. The courts have said you can't do that. So this is where the rubber meets the road. And of course, they're testing the limits everywhere. That's what that attack on Harvard, freezing $2.2 billion in federal funds, is all about. That's what the continued leak of all of that skullduggery happening from DOJ inside federal agencies. That's what that's all about. The most recent, by the way, is that they've had thousands and thousands of people declared dead because they want to question their immigration status. And by declaring them dead, they can prevent them from earning wages, and they think that'll force them to leave the country. Now, this is illegal. It's a crime. It's falsifying government records, but they're doing it. This is even what they're doing. They're testing the limits by continuing to bar the Associated Press from joining the White House press pool. Seems like a small thing, but a federal judge ordered them to stop doing it. And as of today, they're still doing it. They're still blatantly violating a court order. Now, when the media talks about this stuff, they usually ask, are we in a constitutional crisis? My question of the day, my question that I'm going to pose to Tony Michaels, joining us directly from the Coffman Chronicle, is, how are we not in a constitutional crisis?
I mean, I guess that's a good question. I don't know if we are or not. I mean, and I'm being dead serious about that, because I think we're staring at ringing the bell of the constitutional crisis here. Donald Trump saying in an interview, apparently with Fox News Spanish. I didn't know Fox News even decided that they would speak Spanish. I thought our national language is English. One point I try to make them make, but he's talking about deporting American citizens at this point to foreign prisons without due process, and that's really the thing we're talking about with Garcia. Is it's not about what he did or if he did it or if he's guilty or if he's innocent. That's the whole point, is you cannot just send someone to a prison without due process. You can't detain them without any due process. And they have done that. I actually believe that there is a really good chance that Mr. Garcia, unfortunately, is not alive. That's part of my belief here, is the reason why they are having such a difficult time with Mr. Garcia is because they can't bring Garcia back. He's gone. And maybe he's gone like long gone, and maybe he's just gone like he's not alive anymore. I don't know. They have not been able to confirm or deny. The president of El Salvador would not confirm or deny. He act like Garcia was dead as well. Now, the constitutional crisis comes if they cannot return him, I believe. The constitutional crisis comes if they do it again to someone else after they've been told that this is an illegal order. Now, a lot of people will say and yell and scream and tell you all kinds of legal mumbo jumbo and jargon on CNN and MSNBC and YouTube channels across this platform. And they will tell you all kinds of stuff about a constitutional crisis. But they would also tell you that Donald Trump was not allowed to be on the ballot because of the 14th Amendment, but he was. They will also tell you all kinds of stuff that never came to fruition, that he had to be tried in a federal court, and he never was. So all this stuff is left with the question. And the question is are we in, that is the question, are we in a constitutional crisis? That's the question that Americans should be asking themselves this morning, other than how are you going to pay your mortgage in June when the stock market and the bond market and you get laid off. I mean, those are questions they should be asking themselves too. So
I shouldn't laugh, but it's all that prevents me from crying. So yes.
Yeah. Well, I think this is part of the plan, right? Is to stress Americans to a point to where they don't know what is most stressful, right? Because America is in for a very difficult economic time. And let me tell you something, when America starts to tumble into that big economic time, when Walmart and Amazon, Target, a lot of these big employers around the country, manufacturers around the country start announcing layoffs, and it's going to be massive layoffs. These aren't going to be little. These are going to be massive layoffs, and it's going to have a profound effect on our economy almost instantaneously. And when those dominoes start to fall, Donald Trump is not going to be able to handle the coverage of his economy. And the reason why is because he's owned every single last drop of this. This is his economy. He has done this. The American people understand he has done this. There is no, ambiguity to this. It is Trump's economy. And when it crashes, and he knows it's going to crash because this morning he's making sure that farmers understand, the corporate farmers, by the way, we don't have mom and pop farmers in this country. I love it. I love how he types it out like it's Harold and Fred, plowing the fields with their mule.
Right, like American Gothic, right?
Right.
Standing there with your pitchforks.
That's not American farms anymore. I don't know if anyone knows this, but big money and billionaires and investment and hedge funds have bought up all the farms. And if they don't own the farms, they own the crops that are on the family farms. Okay. Monsanto and others, they own that shit. What's really funny about all this? What's really funny about the farmer thing and him saying this stuff this morning is FDR basically came into office in a dust bowl, right? He had a decimated population, not just because of greed in the 1929 crash, but also because they really couldn't grow food. We had a really tough time through the Depression, not just because we had greed leading up to it, and then we had Republicans doing Smoot-Hawley and those tariffs that drew us into a deeper recession. But then we had the Dust Bowl. We couldn't grow food in the dirt that we had. And so what FDR did is he socialized farms. Let me say that again. He socialized farms. There are still farmers and farming communities out there that have what is called a co-op. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people have no clue about this. They've never lived in a farm community. They've never seen a grain bin co-op before. What a co-op is, just so everyone understands, it's a socialism thing, okay? This is commie type stuff. These are commie farmers. So what they do is farmers, they sell their crop together because they want selling power and buying power. And they know that they're going to get a better price for their goods if they collectively sell their grain or their food together to a market. Sometimes that commodity market is a foreign country. Sometimes it's the United States of America. Sometimes it's a big food conglomerate that is using that raw commodity to make a product. Okay. But they co-op, they socialize. It's socialism, folks. Farmers and farming is the original socialist of America, if you want to put it that way. And this morning, what Donald Trump is describing is a socialism payment that he made in 2018 because of his boneheaded trade war that he instigated. And then he's describing a payment that he's going to pay him. And apparently, blonde-headed bimbo in the White House is standing up right now as we speak, describing how Donald Trump
have to be more specific there. Tony.
Oh well, okay. the press secretary,
yes,
that one. She is right now describing apparently how Trump is going to pay this socialism payment to corporate farms, because the majority of farming in this country is actually owned by big corporations, not by mom and pops.
It's astonishing.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating that most people in this country don't even know how our government operates, but they don't even know how food gets to their table and the steps that it takes to get that food to the table and who is involved in that. The other thing that is absolutely frustrating here is that the farmers that he's going to bail out, come in here real close, my redheaded friends, if you're listening. The people who pick the crops on those farms, they're fucking illegal aliens. So it just, again, I want to use that language. And the reason why I want to use that language is because this is the language that MAGA is going to use. This is the language that they feel all good inside about. And the next language before your next guest comes in, because I know I don't want to filibuster his time.
No, you're good.
But I want to say something about Garcia and the First Amendment. I find it astounding that I have been lectured because I live in rural America. I live in the country. I'm one of those country folk. I grew up in the hills of the Ozarks. I'm a hillbilly, a hick, a redneck. There's a lot of different names for us. But I've been told for decades and decades and decades and decades that there's one principle about this country, and it's the Second Amendment. And the reason why we have the Second Amendment, Matt, is so that we can protect our First Amendment against a tyrannical government. Well, I am wondering, where is the parade of yellow snake flags and AR-15s? Where are they at marching on Washington this morning? Because in my view, if they had any kind of principle in their ideology that they have been puking up on us for the last 50 years, then they would be the ones out front in this protest against this administration and this dictatorial regime who is trying to shut people up and is trying to ship people out because they don't like who they are and what they say, without due process of law and using the Constitution to wipe their ass on the way out the door. I'm sorry to
I am going to try. Okay. I mean, you said so much good stuff there. I'm going to try a rational, sane person's version of the weave. You know, Trump does the weave. They call it the weave. Okay. What I'm going to try to do is weave together some of what you just said with our incoming guest, Jason Fields, who I'm just trying to not sandbag him when I add him on here. Sure. And I also want to give you the permission structure. I'm going to shift the Overton window to allow you, after you have live streamed. Have you live streamed for 4 hours today, Tony?
No, it's 2 hours before I came here, and I talked to Lev Parnas for, I think it was just over 30 minutes this morning.
You are a machine. So I want to give you the ability, take a break.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah.
Some urgent biological needs, perhaps. But
yeah, I've got a cold too. I'm doing all this with a cold too.
You really are. You really are.
It's make sure everyone knows
it is remarkable how history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And you were referring to the 2018 tariff disaster under Trump, which his own administration estimated economically cost something on the order of $2,000 per American family. They, of course, have short-term memory loss about that, but that's what induced them to have to make those farm support payments. He's talking about it again. And we are barely 100 years past the Smoot-Hawley round of tariffs, which at the time, there was just a great episode of Plain History about this with Derek Thompson, author of the Abundance Agenda idea, and talking about the fact that at the time, Republicans knew that this was going to be a disaster. It was the fact that they went ahead and marched off that cliff was all about their parochial politics and the farm interests that they were trying to suck up to at the time, even when those farm interests were aware that tariffs would not help them, that it would set them back themselves. And by the way, I just want to acknowledge William Knight coming in for the win with apparently the name of the White House press secretary is Bullshit Barbie, courtesy of Michael Cohen. Didn't know that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's a lot of nicknames you could give to her. I actually said some things on my show that most people in most circles would say you cannot say, but Tony Michaels absolutely says them because I say the things that most people will not say.
If anyone hears something offensive coming from me, I want you to remember that my name is Cliff Schechter. Okay. With that, let me bring in Jason Fields. Welcome to the show.
He got thrown into this. He's like, who and what is going on here?
I gave you.
I hate to say it, it's the normal look on my face. That's
okay, all right. Well, that's
just how I look.
I remember they interviewed the mobster who Goodfellas was sort of modeled after on 2020. This was like 35 years ago, and he said, "Here I am, the mafia." And I feel like after the introduction I gave you that you missed at the top of the show, I should be like, well, here you are, the media. You have worked for the top media organizations in America, and you're like the last sane one left. So I'm really happy to have you on.
Thank you so much. Yes, I have worked for them all, and notice I don't work for them anymore.
Right. Exactly. Are they the media still? Are they the media still? Are they just actually, a machine?
I've actually happily been ensconced here at Newsweek for about 3 years, which is the longest time I've been ensconced anywhere for a while.
So well, we're very, very happy to have you. And as I kind of teased at the top of the show, you do bring this perspective from the biggest names in media on earth. And also over at Newsweek, where, I tease the idea that you've really been all over. You've been encouraging me in my writing for Newsweek to really be all over this wholesale demolition of the American system, the American way. And it feels hyperbolic to say that, but the dots we wanted to connect today, and I can see in the comments that people are like, hey, we buy that we're in a constitutional crisis. We're in a full-scale authoritarian takeover. So we don't have to sell people too hard on that. But it sure seems to me that with things coming to a head in the Abrego Garcia case, the potential for an outright, blatant disregard, just sloughing off a federal court order, a Supreme Court order, making true the apocryphal statement for John Marshall to go enforce his own ruling. That takes us to a place we've really never been. They've been playing footsie with it, and they're doing lots of things, the Harvard funding freeze and the tariffs. They're doing a lot of, oh, it's a shell game. Look over here. There's a disaster over here. Oh, the Doge stuff over here. Yeah, that's pretty terrible. They've been flooding the zone in order to try and cram a lot of things through at once. But to me, it is all bubbling up to, this is not a drill anymore. We have really crossed some kind of a line. Are you seeing it the same way?
Oh, yeah. And what I think is interesting is it wasn't going to necessarily be this, but this is where we were heading. I mean, the question was what was going to get to the Supreme Court first that they were going to then ignore, right? I mean, it turns out it's deporting people to El Salvador. That got to the court first. That has a court ruling. Now they're ignoring that, but there was going to be something, right? I mean, there was going to be a round of cuts that had happened, like foreign aid was cut, right? And now there was talk about having to have some of that stuff restored, whatever it was. It didn't matter really what the actual subject was. What mattered was the defiance was coming, and that we were going to have to pick whether we wanted a constitution or a monarchy. And unfortunately, I think the time to pick was November. Where were you guys? I seem to remember trying to pull a lever somewhere, but apparently it wasn't connected to anything.
Yeah, you remember when after Brexit, John Oliver came on and said, good news, we get another chance to run this election next week. He's like, no, we don't. I'm joking. Like we don't get a redo here. Yeah, no. It's yes, lefty grabs. By the way, for people coming in on the comments, I am not Cliff Schechter after a horrible illness. I could be. We did go to high school together. Fun fact, I'm Matt Robison. Cliff and I go way back when I was a congressional chief of staff and he was out in the media consulting sphere. We did some work together. This was back in the aughts. And now I am a writer and Substacker. And my editor is here. people, make me look good in front of my editor. So you've got me. You've got
Why
Jason
did you?
Fields.
Why the hell did you invite me then? That was
I
a
don't
really
know.
dumb
Well,
idea.
because,
wait
you're the
a
hardest-
second. Wait a second, Matt. I got to ask this question. So what you did was you said, "Hey, my boss is going to come on, and my editor is going to come on here for Newsweek." And the good idea that you had was to invite Tony Michaels to this thing. Oh my gosh,
this was my good idea, because what I figured was you're probably so exhausted at this point from, by my count.
No,
you've done
hey,
4
listen, I could talk for 12 more hours if I had it. I could talk for 12 more hours if I had it.
I just figured that we'd get you loopy enough
all day long.
that
all day long. But I do have to go, and I appreciate you having me on, and I enjoyed meeting you. And Matt, as always, just let me know. I will come and I will drop.
Yeah, we'll do more of this. Definitely,
I will drop my unique perspective and opinion and my unique language that I always tend to use on a regular basis with no end in sight. When I was in second grade, I want to tell you the story real quick.
Yeah.
When I was in second grade, my teacher, she sent home a report card from the first quarter, and it said on the back of it, she wrote it in the notes. She said, "Tony talks too much." That's what she said, and I think she was right. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys soon.
Hey, since I resemble that remark, take care, Tony. We'll see you again soon.
We'll see you.
Since I resemble that remark, I want to go to a comment here, and I want to attribute it to the right commenter. There it is, Concerned Rabbit. I love people's handles. Freaking awesome. Concerned Rabbit wrote a minute ago, the GOP sits and watches this nightmare. It's not just Trump. That gets to a point that you and I discussed offline, Jason, which is, I wanted to write a little bit about the massive die-off of shame that should be occurring among Republicans and is not. And you said, Matt, that's a great idea for a topic. Too bad a bunch of other people have already had it on the Newsweek opinion page and are slamming it. But what are you seeing from kind of, the opinion sphere that's showing up on the Newsweek page? I mean, are people getting this? Like, you have Senator Jim Banks writing for you on the page all the time. Like, why are Republicans not dripping of shame? And why are they watching this happen?
I love this. The concept that shame still has relevancy in this culture. I'm trying to think back to a time when it did. Actually, 2 or more years ago, I wrote a column saying, why does shame have no impact left on people? But the Republicans would have to disagree to feel shame, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who's left out there who really disagrees with what's going on. That's what's so interesting, is to think that there are a couple of hundred representatives, and let's not even talk about senators, but just a couple of hundred representatives, just slightly more than half, who are actually willing to sell democracy down the river and feel no shame about it.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that.
When I was on my podcast, so my podcast is called Beyond Politics. I probably need to subsume it all under Worth Knowing on my Substack. But, look, I spent a decade as a congressional staffer, and this was during the 2000s. I was alluding to this a moment ago. I was working with Cliff off and on at the time. And, I was a chief of staff, and I was usually working for members of Congress in tough swing districts, right? So we did a lot of working with Republicans. And even though it was the George W. Bush era, we could still do that. There was still kind of a breed of Republican where at the staff level and at the member of Congress level, behind closed doors, there was a lot we could get done. I passed some really good pieces of legislation on behalf of my bosses working with Republicans. So I had Jamie Raskin on the show a little ways back, and I said, look, are there any Republicans that you can talk to? Do they get it? Kind of like behind closed doors, are they eye rolling about all this? And he said, no, not really. They're gone. And so it goes to your point that in order for there to be, when the tariff thing happened, there was at least this weak effort among Republicans to get behind a bill to yank back tariff authority. There was sort of a token, but, what is going to take? And I see Hugh Tube is asking, here's the thing. Why would they be outraged and pushed back if they keep winning majorities? I think, Hugh, that is an outstanding point. I had Chuck Schumer's right-hand man for policy on my show, Ryan McConaughey, a couple of times and a little ways back. And he said, I asked him about this, like, what's it going to take for Republicans to start doing something? And he said, look, if you want to fix their behavior inside the institution, you've got to fix their incentives outside the institution. And to Hugh's point, it seems to me that they believe that sticking with this is what their base wants. That's all they're beholden to. And that's driving their behavior.
But, there's always more to it than that. I mean, you have to be the sort of person who wants power for its own sake, or at least to have a small office somewhere in a corner of, one of the congressional office buildings. I mean, it's fascinating what people are willing to sell their souls for, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to be one of the 435, I'm sure. I'm sure it's great to be part of the 535. All great, but is that really enough to sell out your country? A couple $100,000 and, the ability to get the flag flown at half-mast if someone you like died. I mean, honestly, it just seems like you'd want more to actually sell out the entire United States and everything that it stood for 200 years, almost 250 now.
It is interesting. And look, on my show, I do panel discussions with like the last remaining reasonable Republicans in America. And one of them is a columnist for McClatchy, and she's out with something where, so first of all, obviously she's a woman, she's a conservative, and by writing about the Trump tariffs, writing against them, she is being attacked on social media and in the comments section. She's being called not just a rhino, not just a sellout, she's being called a whore, which I guess is not a shock that there's an underlying misogyny and vileness to the hard right. But it does seem like there's something fundamentally sick that's gone on that's kind of grown in on itself on the right, and that Trump is playing to. And it feels like we're all in kind of a mass delusion. Not all, but there is a mass delusion going on about this. And I just wrote this for you in Newsweek, that there's this kind of shared secret that Musk and Trump have. This I call it the glass onion principle, that they've created this. It's after the movie. Spoiler alert, people. If you haven't seen Glass Onion, first of all, you should. It's awesome. And second of all, it really hits on something I think fundamental going on, which is, if you are wealthy, Americans want to be rich so badly. They venerate wealth so much that they assume that wealth implies talent. And make no mistake, Musk and Trump both have some kind of talent. It's a talent for hyping themselves and their own enterprises. It's fundamentally bullshit, but that is a talent. But it's
Bullshit
not the
is a
underlying
talent.
Yeah, it's something.
It really is. No. I mean, honestly, what's more important? I mean, I just, in terms of success, your column was terrific.
Thank you.
I mean, really, no, I think you just captured it so well. I mean, some of it goes back to the old saying, fake it till you make it, right? I mean, that's been around for a while, but it's more than that. It's so stellar how Musk, you go into something that I think is actually not everybody knows. You talk about how Musk was so concentrated on the idea of being the founder of things, founder of PayPal, for example, that when he was canned, he made sure that the legal language forevermore would refer to him as a founder. And he came in late to Tesla and made sure that, he is a founder of Tesla, despite the fact that the guys who founded Tesla are long gone. I think that sort of need for authentication and anyway, your column, I just thought, really hit it out of the park by showing how central this stuff is to these guys, the appearance of legitimacy, because just that appearance is what brings them everything they want.
Right. And it gives them, we talked before about permission structure. It gives them permission structure. It gives them runway to work with, to get away with outrageous things. because they hang up a sign saying the genius is at work. And they're self-referential moments of, oh, you know, Trump with his, I've got a great brain. What the hell? It's so meta. It's like anyone who delivers a sentence like that clearly does not have a great brain. Their own mythos of genius, of, oh, I must see something going on here that the rest of you don't, is what's given people pause, just that little bit of hesitation. So Elon Musk comes in and does obviously horrible and destructive things, but there's just that little bit of hesitation, and you're inside the media. You I'm sure recognize this. It's like, well, maybe he's up to something here. When Trump institutes these economically moronic tariffs, right? Not a single economist on earth who's like, no, this is clearly a great idea, right? He does this, and there's just this little bit of, well, he's bought himself this illusion of credibility that it's like, oh, and what happens is we start sane washing the crazy. We start trying to, it's like you get some genius director who makes a movie and the movie is terrible, but the critics are like, well, maybe he was doing some mise en scène here. Maybe there's like, you know, maybe
you're
there's
thinking
like
about Francis Ford Coppola, aren't you?
Yes,
Just too kind to say
it's like,
anything.
How about we just say out loud that this is crap and the emperor has no clothes? That's really what I'm driving at with this, is that, you know, we've sort of slouched our way toward this Gomorrah of total insanity, and now we may have gone too far to unwind it. Boy, I'm really a downer today. I should have called today's episode Stone Cold Bummer with Matt Robison. I don't mean to be. I'm seriously alarmed. Give me some good
news. We just talk? Oh, well, no, I refuse.
Is the Harvard fight gonna wake people up? Is Harvard fighting back gonna start to lead to something? Or are you seeing something else that's like, okay, this is good, like we're getting somewhere?
So Harvard is actually such a wonderful case because, I mean, they've got an endowment in the tens of billions of dollars. If anyone could fight back, you'd figure it would be them. They're the most revered institution, and at the same time, one of the most loathed. And I'm seen as the very center on the right of everything that's wrong with America. If it isn't Columbia, it's Harvard, and I think they'd rather target Harvard, really, if it came down to it. So it's going to be a matter. Actually, you know what this brings us right back to? It brings us right back to the question of what the Trump administration will do if and when they lose. I'm sorry, but it comes right back around to that, because Harvard can have the best lawyers, they can have the most money, they can take it all the way to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court says something that Trump doesn't like, honestly, if you boil it down, does it matter what the Supreme Court said? I'm sorry. You asked me for something cheerful. You asked me for something cheerful, and I'm just having trouble with that.
Let's go dark again for a second, because I had kind of, just as you were working your way onto the show, I was sort of teeing that up. That this is why I think that this is kind of the cliff's edge moment today, is they've sort of been able to fudge it. They've even on something like barring the Associated Press from being part of the White House press pool. I mean, it's like such a process story, right? So they can get away with it. People aren't paying attention. Then a federal court orders them to knock it off and to let the AP in. And they didn't do it yesterday. But because they set the list of who's allowed into the room the night before, they could have, well, we didn't have a chance to do it. Yes. Right. But now, today, they did it again. They're in blatant defiance of a court order, and they're doing it in areas that are, you know, maybe a little bit gray. This order comes in from the federal judge overseeing the Abrego Garcia case, saying, okay, give me a report on his whereabouts and your plans to repatriate him. They come back with a 49-word statement the next day. He is alive. And there's a little bit more to it, but they don't really comply with the court order. And then there's this Kafka-esque catch-22, you know, upside down press conference with the president of El Salvador, where it's like, well, He's in a quantum superposition of hell. He is unable to be returned, and we can't ask for him back. Therefore, he has been disappeared. Oh, mistakes were made, except maybe they weren't. One part of the
Schrodinger's
administration
prisoner,
saying
in other words.
up. Yeah, the other isn't. And so, this is why I think things really are coming to a head, because at some point, as much as Trump says, as he did after that press conference, I will follow, I respect the Supreme Court, I'll follow the Supreme Court. He either follows it or he doesn't. The quantum superposition has to collapse.
Right.
People are saying in the chat, by the way, that they don't believe that Abrego Garcia is alive. I pray that isn't the case.
Unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to find out anytime soon.
Well,
I mean, Bukele's not going to tell you anything. Trump's not going to tell you anything. If it's bad news for, Mr. Garcia, there's no way they're going to let that out right away. If good news means they might actually have to return him somehow, which they really don't want to do. I think your quantum superposition argument, I think that's where they want it to stay, right? I mean, he's neither alive nor dead, as you say. And
then they get to just keep rolling things forward, like rotating credit card debt of crisis, where it's like, oh, our attention will be on to the next thing.
Well, but that's what they did in the first time around too. I mean, in Trump 1, we never really did quite catch our breath as the media. We were constantly one crisis behind. They didn't take things quite so far, but we also did a terrible job of cutting through the crap, and we focused on each singular event as it came up, as opposed to dealing with some systemic issues of governance. So I think what we're doing actually in this show is a little different. We are actually, as opposed to, talking about a deportation case or a case with Harvard or the law firms that are knuckling under to Trump at record rates.
Right.
It's all of those things individually are important, but they're actually almost a distraction from the overall point, which is democracy being torn apart. I mean, each individual step is important on that road, and they should be noted. But I think it's very easy when you do that to focus on today's news and miss how it's really part of that big picture. And that this is actually every day another blow and another situation where it's hard to see how we go back.
Since
Sorry,
I've essentially
I'm
labeled
not
you
good
as
at being undepressing.
Well, since I've essentially labeled you as a personification of the media writ large, I'm gonna, which is really not a nice thing to say to someone, especially your boss. So I'm gonna, but I mean it as a compliment, like I truly do. Let me throw this at you, and we had a comment here. Denise Rossler writes, Kristi Noem was allowed in the prison for a photo op. Why can't she go back there with the Maryland senator and get him back? Denise, yes. What I would like is for your question to be asked of Kristi frickin' Noem and Donald John Trump. And it felt like, talk about rotating credit card debt of crisis that gets our attention. This is right back to Steve Bannon. He says the quiet part out loud. He's like Babe Ruth calling his shot, pointing to left field. It's like, here's what we're going to do. Flood the zone so that you overwhelm the ability of the opposition, meaning like sane people, Democrats, and the media to do anything about it or to focus on any one piece of it. And you're making, this holistic point. The whole enterprise is destroy the fabric of democracy, and each little piece of it is flooded at you so fast that you can't stop the individual pieces.
No, but you do keep grasping after them.
You keep grasping at them, right? And then you're spinning plates, which, by the way, for people who are coming in late and who are asking, where's Cliff Schecter? That's kind of literally what he's doing right now. Is he's got this show, he's got a Wednesday show, he's got a new Thursday show on Substack. He's like Flubber. You can use him for anything. And so we are stepping in to try to just keep this show going strong for a little while he keeps the plates spinning. So back to Denise's question. It felt to me like during the Signalgate crisis, which feels like a lifetime ago, it was 2 weeks ago, it felt like the media was shaken out of its torpor. It felt like it was a sudden jab to the solar plexus of like, whoa, wait, this is a scandal. We could, it's amazing. I forgot that we could do this. We can hold people to account. We can ask them impossible questions that they're going to stammer over. Do you see any signs that the media is going to ask Denise's question at any point or anything like it and start really holding this administration to some account?
I don't know that the media actually can at the moment. And what I mean by that is that people are really scared, and you're dealing with in the media the same stuff that you're dealing with everywhere else. When you think about the law firms, not much has happened to them. They capitulated. ABC News handed over $15 million when Trump won the election, not because they were going to lose a slander case in court, but because, here, take my $15 million and don't hurt me. I mean, this is happening all over the place. It's people shutting themselves down first. I don't particularly feel like writing right now. I got to tell you. I mean, I myself, brave enough to come on this show, and hopefully, I know it's being recorded, but hopefully nobody's listening. Anyway, but to say that,
don't worry, you're not live. It's funny.
That's good.
Everyone in the comments, don't tell them.
Right, quiet. But do you really want to get on that list? And then you start thinking, well, what is it that I have to lose? And everybody has something to lose. And if you are by any chance a middle-aged person, which I would hardly pretend not to be at this point, you have children, you have college, you've got a house, and it's not that hard for them to start taking these things away. It's chilling. I mean, take a second to step back. I mean, they start auditing you. That's all they have to do. They can take your entire life apart. The IRS.
You know what I'm going to do here?
I mean, it's just a little chilling.
All right. I'm going to attempt an act of mental transubstantiation because you have me. I am so everything you're saying is really spot on. And I have to say the comments are coming in and very much echoing with the ABC News capitulation, right? That was scary. You have Trump truthing. Oh my gosh, that's so terrible. Truthing on Sunday night. He apparently sits down to watch 60 Minutes and then, because they're critical of him, says, puts out a truth saying, I watched 60 Minutes last night. I'm enraged. I want the network's license revoked.
Right.
And you have the AP. Why is the AP in trouble? Well, they won't knuckle under. He used to work for the AP and say it's the Gulf of America. And Mount Melania or whatever it is he's going to do next. No. They insist on the Gulf of Mexico because that's the way the world.
Melania.
Yes, exactly. So
you're right. And I got to say, hold on. I just want to say, and for the Associated Press, for Reuters, I mean, these are two of the most brave institutions that I know. Very, very proud to have worked for both. They don't knuckle under when other organizations do. AP has this fantastically unique ownership structure. It's not owned by one person. It's not owned by a corporation. It's not a corporation. It's actually not owned by the markets. Think about that. AP is actually a collective, a cooperative of all the major newspapers in the entire country and beyond. And they are brave and doing great work. And I want to commend them and say, hey, look, they aren't knuckling under to anything. They aren't offering up $20 million to get their seat back on the plane. They're fighting it in court. They're doing what they can. I just think it's worth taking a second to say, you know what, the media, it's not a monolith.
And I'm so glad you went there, because I promised some transubstantiation to try and take us from this, pile of lead into at least a little bit of gold, and something a little bit positive. And all right, I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to try and connect the dots over. One of the things, we did a video from my friend, my former Capitol Hill staff colleague, Ann Kim, here on the Cliff's Edge channel a couple of weeks ago. She's a contributing editor over at Washington Monthly. We did a video, 200,000 views to date, where she just laid out, look, here's how you can make your economic voice heard. Vote with your dollars, reward and punish based on whether people are knuckling under. One thing that I think people can do is what you just laid out, which is go to the news sources that aren't knuckling under, reward the entities that are fighting back and standing up for important principles that you care about. And you can do it economically, and you can do it with your earballs and your eyeballs. People, I'm not meaning to sprain a shoulder, patting myself and everyone else here on the back. This is egregious audience suck-uppery from me. But I think by participating in stuff like this, and getting news from sources unafraid to just say what it is that's going on, and pose the tough questions like Denise's, you're doing something positive by amplifying that kind of thing. And I would encourage you, Jason, to write, man. You've got to write. You're a great writer. You've got to keep saying the things that people need to read and use your platform. So that's one positive thing. And the other one is, I want to do a little bit of, I don't know if I'm like revealing something to you that I shouldn't, but I did a little Substack article. I can't just write for you.
No, we wouldn't want that.
I did a Substack
Actually,
article.
we would really want it. We just can't afford it.
No, I appreciate that. I do.
We would love to have you exclusively. Trust me.
I did a Substack article. I'll actually put it in the chat right here, because I'm sure I won't be able to cover everything that I put in there. But my argument was, Republicans should be growing pretty darn nervous right now. Just look at the numbers. And I'll just quickly run through it. Trump's polling is sinking really fast, especially his rating on the economy. And critically, our friends over at Navigator Research, one of the best polling outfits out there, stratify things by Democrats, independents, and then they break out MAGA Republicans and non-MAGA Republicans, self-identified. Even among MAGA Republicans, he's going down. Now, he's still way above water with MAGA Republicans, but they're seeing the same drop there in public support that we're seeing across the board. GBAO, another polling outfit, finds that 14% of Trump's 2024 voters, people who voted for him 6 months ago, are, quote, soft and movable. Now, I say in there, that's not necessarily a description of their physical state. Maybe it is. I don't know. I think it's, are they movable? The economic indicators, the Michigan survey of consumer confidence. I've actually had the leader of that survey on my show before. She's fascinating, by the way. Consumer confidence, the lowest level since 1952. 1952. Republican Senate candidates are struggling to raise money. There was an internal Republican meeting, Axios reported on it, saying they're all kind of like biting their nails about this. Historically, presidents with job approval ratings below 50% their party loses 37 House seats on average. Now, that's a lot less likely to happen these days because there's so much gerrymandering and people are sorted geographically. But right now, we're seeing all this overperformance in special elections, and that augurs what's to come. And Republicans are internally kind of, I was going to say something more vile. They're sweating themselves because they know that Trump can make things much, much worse. So I guess my point is, to this long diatribe, this is my attempt to say, none of this is futile. None of this, like tuning in to other media sources and rewarding the media sources, like I have to say, Newsweek on the opinion page, we are doing our part here. Tuning in, paying attention, amplifying it. it is breaking through. People are getting the message about this. We have to keep it up. That was a long diatribe. I'll let you get it.
No, I think that's true. I think that the only thing that would mitigate against that is from Spinoza. I'm going to be really pretentious. I'm going to go to Spinoza, century-old philosopher, to say he points out the problem with electoral democracy is that people are free for one day every 4 years. All the other time you're just governed. You have no say. You just have to watch it happen. And in our case, it's every 2 years. But I mean, it's absolutely well, make those times count. I don't know. Maybe we have to do more though. Honestly, do we really want to wait? Can we wait?
No,
Can
we
we
have to
wait
do
a
more.
year and a half?
All right,
I
here's what I'm
mean,
going to put out. Here's what I'm going to put
okay.
out to this group, because you can tell from the comments. By the way, I just got it. I don't know why I missed upon the first time. Anyway, your name's probably not Hugh. Okay, I'm slow on the uptake. But one thing, I had a fellow Substacker, actually a fellow. Okay, I'm going to admit something. We're going to lose the whole audience here. I'm a Harvard alum. I went to the Kennedy School of Government. So I feel very strongly about Harvard fighting back. Okay,
Yep.
and a fellow alum from the Kennedy School has just started a Substack, and she's pointing out kind of good news points of resistance. That's
Mhm.
her whole concept here. And I started asking her, well, what would you do? What would your game plan be? She laid out a few bullets. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to crowdsource this. I would like to see what a smart group of people who are plugged in and who have some experience at this, what they think, what goes into the game plan for Democrats. Once again, James Carville was in the New York Times over the weekend, doubling down on his "we should play dead" strategy. And there's an argument there. I'm not going to pretend that there's not an argument there, but there's a counter argument of no, we shouldn't. If they're at the cliff's edge, we should push them. So I would love to hear from people. Feel free to put it in the comments, or do me a favor, come find me. I'm at worthknowing.substack.com. Come find me on Substack. Oh, geez. When we're talking about the administration coming after people who oppose them, I don't want to suggest to anyone to come find me. So only if you're friendly.
That is the downside, yes.
Yeah, come find me and give me your thoughts, and I will compile this and I will write it up. And one other thing I want to do, because I know I've got to get you out of here. We've got to get out of here pretty soon. People are pointing out here in the comments just some practical steps, and I think it's worth amplifying. Bring your birth certificate and marriage license with you when you vote. I think that's a little bit tongue in cheek, but people are saying, like, look, if you're traveling to this country, make sure you have your documents. Make sure you know your legal rights. If you can follow Kim Whaley, she's the ABC News legal analyst. She's on Substack, and her Simple Politics is the name of her Substack. Great legal scholar. She just put out a piece with a legal colleague of hers outlining these are your rights. Make sure that your neighbors who may have protected status but may not be U.S. citizens or might be naturalized U.S. citizens, make sure they know what their rights are, what their legal rights are. Now, the administration has shown that they will trample on these rights, but see if you can throw some sand in the gears. See if you can do anything to avail yourself of all the tools you might have to protect yourself. So anyway, I wanted to put that in, but I don't know. Any last thoughts? I mean, I read off my kind of like silver lining, my blue linings playbook to you of here's the good stuff that I see. Are you feeling like today we're really we're really on the precipice, or are you feeling some silver linings?
I think actually, if there's one thing I would leave people with, and I guess it's not on the bright side, but it's not that dark. Just sort of the way I'm thinking about things right now is to try to not allow for a failure of imagination. That phrase that became
Mm.
so important after September 11th, 24 years ago. People, for some reason, all of the pieces were there of this plot to take planes and fly them into buildings. It was all there. FBI knew a lot of what was going on, but there was, and I think it's never been contradicted, just this failure of imagination to believe that someone would actually put all of these pieces together and do it, right? And because of that, or at least partially because of that, they were able to do it. Don't get caught with that same failure of imagination now. Take it to the worst. Think about what it could be. You might be able to help prevent it if you do. But if you can't imagine something that you're going to look back on in 2 years and say, wow, that was obvious. If only I put the pieces together. You can't guard against anything. Just don't expect the worst, but at least try to think what it could be and try to be on your guard against it. Don't just let it go by.
Jason, I think you have just live workshopped your next article for Newsweek on this show. You have to write this up, that we can't let failure of imagination be our undoing. You should make the 9/11 metaphor, and you should tie in all of the what was it? The system is flashing red. The system is flashing red. That's what they found in the post 9/11 commission report. And that's what I think we're seeing right now. And it's little things like not letting the AP into the White House press pool. It's bigger things like snatching a Tufts University student who the State Department, Washington Post revealed the State Department had no evidence of anything against her.
Awful was that.
Absolutely awful.
I mean, there's just no words for that.
It's weaponizing the justice system to go after Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor. It's Eric Prince. Politico reported this. Eric Prince is pitching. You remember him, the former Blackwater CEO, pitching the White House right now on a plan to vastly expand deportations to El Salvador. There's the reporting from Rolling Stone that the White House is actively considering, how do we do that? How do we start sending American citizens to gulags abroad? There's Trump watching 60 Minutes and openly saying, I want to revoke their license. There's sign after sign after sign. And let's not look back a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, and say, well, we had a failure of imagination. We couldn't believe with all these signs that it would go so far. Let's believe that it would. All right, Jason Fields, I'm looking forward to you writing what you just said even better and more pointedly than my summary. People can find you. They will find you, your writing, and certainly your fingerprints on the work from all the rest of us at newsweek.com, opinion. Anything else to plug in there?
Yeah, actually, I've got one thing I just mentioned. We also, I have a podcast. Oh my God. Someone with a podcast? But yes, in fact, I've actually had a podcast for 10 years to just sort of show our age about conflicts all over the world. It's a real strong international focus. Some domestic stuff creeps in there because they can't help it. It's called Angry Planet. And I think you'll have to agree, it is an angry planet. I do it with Matthew Galt, who is brilliant, and you've probably seen all of his writing out there in the world. He does a lot of writing about tech and the intersection of tech and defense issues. Anyway, I just think it'd be great if you guys came along and saw what you thought or heard what you thought.
It is up on the screen right now for everyone viewing us, angryplanetpod.com. Jason Fields, thanks so much. And to everyone out there, we are going to get out of here. Now, we have teased in last week's show that Cliff Schechter, he's around. He hasn't disapparated fully. My joke last week is that he's like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar. He's trapped in a tesseract behind my bookshelf, and he might like leap out or at least send me through the sand in the books behind me. By the way, this is a real backdrop. This isn't like, these are actually my books. So He may be popping in future Tuesdays. I would love if you made this appointment viewing and came back to hang with us. As you can see, we pay a lot of attention to what you're saying in the comments. Do please hit me up at worthknowing.substack.com. I would love to have you subscribing, following, and chatting with me there. I would love to hear your ideas on what the Democrats' game plan should be. And with that, we will wrap this up. We've got some fun guests coming next week. Who should I tease? I'll leave it there. I'll leave it hanging there. And I will put right up there, worthknowing.substack.com. Jason Fields, thanks so much for being on. And everyone,
thank you.
We will see you next week.